The first time the ship appeared, it wasn't supposed to be there. I was sitting in the observation cradle of the Orion's Reach, sipping stale recycled water and staring into the haze of the Forbidden Zone. The zone was the one place you didn't go unless you were suicidal, or desperate enough to pretend you weren't. It was quiet, too quiet for space, and the black emptiness there seemed to swallow even sensor pings. But then the blip showed up, not on the main tactical screen. Not even on the short-range scanners. It was a flicker, a reflection, almost like light bending around a hull that shouldn't exist. My hands froze over the controls, the soft hum of the ship's core suddenly too loud in my ears. I zoomed in. There it was. A silhouette, angular, familiar, human. My breath caught before I even realized it. Humanity hadn't sent a manned ship into the zone for over a century. The Treaty of Sistoria saw to that. And yet, I knew what I was seeing. I patched into the bridge. "Commander Raylan, you need to see this." "Save it, Varen. If this is another one of your phantom readings, it's not a phantom, it's a human ship, out there." The line went silent. A long silence, the kind that told me the man on the other end was deciding whether to believe me or call me insane. When he finally spoke, his voice was tighter. "Describe it." I did. The hull plating, the ventral stabilizers, the way the port side thrusters were mounted, the sort of details only someone who'd studied pre-treaty human cruisers would notice. And I had. Back when I still thought those ships represented something noble. Before I learned history was written by those who survived the ugliest wars. "Lock onto it," Raylan said. I tried. The moment the targeting sweep began, the silhouette shimmered like a heat mirage in the desert. One moment it was there, as solid as the Orion's Reach beneath my boots. The next, it was gone. "Lost it," I said, my mouth dry. "Convenient," Raylan muttered. "Stay on your post, and Varen—" His voice dropped. "Don't tell anyone else what you saw." I wanted to argue, but his tone told me it wasn't a request. He cut the channel before I could respond. An hour later, I overheard him speaking in the captain's quarters. Not quietly enough. Words like containment and breach of treaty leaked through the corridor air vents. Words like no one can know. That's when I realized something that hit me harder than the sight of the ship itself. Whatever I'd seen, they already knew. And they'd rather bury it than admit it was real. And if they were hiding it, it meant this wasn't the first time a human ship had been spotted in the Forbidden Zone. The following morning, the Forbidden Zone looked the same as it always did. A bottomless pit in space, silent and untouched. But I didn't trust it. I barely slept after the sighting. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flicker, that angled hull cutting through the black, like a ghost daring me to follow. I could feel the lie already taking shape aboard the Orion's Reach. Raylan would file his report, the captain would sign it, and the incident would vanish into a classified archive somewhere deep in Central Command's vaults. But they couldn't erase what I'd seen. The mess hall was unusually quiet that morning. Even the low-level banter between shift crews was absent, replaced with half-hearted mutters and suspicious glances. I could feel eyes on me when I walked in. A few faces turned quickly away. Others didn't bother to hide the fact they were watching. "You were on long range last night, weren't you?" a voice asked from behind me. I turned to see Corin, one of the engineers. He was a big man, thick-necked, with grease permanently etched into the lines of his hands. The type who wasn't afraid of much, except being lied to. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice even. "Anything unusual?" he asked, and his tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. I shook my head. "Nothing to log." That earned me a slow nod, the kind people give when they've decided you're either a liar or a coward. He walked past me without another word. The truth was, I wasn't about to spill anything in the middle of the mess hall. Word traveled fast in enclosed ships, and suspicion even faster. But the fact that Corin had asked meant the rumor had already started. By midday, it wasn't just whispers. 2 navigation officers were having a heated exchange on the lower deck when I passed through to run diagnostics. They didn't see me, but I caught the tail end of it. "Telling you it was a human design," one said. "And I'm telling you that's impossible," the other snapped. "If it was real, Command would have ordered an intercept. The zone's sealed for a reason." "That's the point. Maybe it's not sealed for what we think." I didn't stick around to hear the rest. But I didn't have to. I already knew where this was headed. Half the crew would want to believe the sighting was real, the other half would refuse to. And somewhere in between, Raylan and the captain would be deciding which half was more dangerous. By the time my shift ended, I'd made up my mind to confront Raylan. He was on the auxiliary bridge, reviewing patrol logs with 2 tactical officers. I waited until they left before stepping inside. "You told me not to tell anyone," I said. "But people already know." He didn't look up from the console. "People know there was an anomaly, that's all." "They're talking about a human ship," I pressed, "and they're saying it was real." Finally, his eyes met mine. "Do you believe it was real?" I didn't answer right away, because saying yes would brand me as someone worth watching, and saying no would make me a liar to myself. "I believe I saw something," I said. "And it wasn't an alien vessel." He studied me for a long moment. "You think you're the first one to see something out here?" My stomach tightened. "You're not," he said quietly. "This zone's been off limits for over 100 years, but ships still skirt the edges, and sometimes they see things they're not supposed to. Human things." "Why cover it up?" I asked. "Because the truth doesn't serve stability," he said flatly. "You tell the galaxy there's human tech in here, operating outside the treaty, and every species with a grudge against Earth will demand blood, and every loyalist still clinging to the past will start worshipping whatever ship's been haunting this zone. Either way, chaos." "Chaos isn't always bad," I said. His expression hardened. "It is when you're the one holding the line." I could have left it there, but something inside me wouldn't let go. "So, what was it? A relic from before the treaty? A survivor?" "I didn't say it was real," he said. "I said people see things." And that was it. He shut me down with that thin little smile, like a door closing in my face. 2 days passed without another sighting. The whispers didn't die, though. If anything, they grew. I caught navigation crews lingering by the observation decks longer than their duty rotations, mechanics inventing excuses to check exterior sensors. Even the med staff seemed more restless. It was like the ship itself was waiting for something. Then, during the 3rd night cycle, it came back. I was on monitoring again, my eyes gritty with exhaustion, when the flicker reappeared. Same position as before, maybe 100 clicks deeper into the zone. This time I didn't hail Rylan. I magnified the image. The hull details were clearer now. Old human military design, no mistaking it. Battle-scarred, but intact. Lights glowed faintly along its dorsal side, like they'd been burning quietly for decades, waiting for someone to notice. A cold chill ran down my spine as I realized the ship was moving. Not drifting, but deliberately angling toward the outer perimeter of the zone. Toward us. Before I could run a full scan, the comm channel flared open. "This is Captain Drevin," the voice boomed. "All crew prepare for immediate course correction. We are leaving the perimeter." Leaving? We'd never cut a patrol short without orders. I switched to private channel. "Captain, there's movement in the zone. You need to see this." "That's an order, Varen," he cut in sharply. Shut down observation and return to station." The channel went dead. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the faint glow on my screen, trying to process it. They weren't just ignoring the ship. They were actively running from it. I thought about Ryland's warning, about stability and chaos. I thought about how quickly the crew was dividing into believers and deniers. And then I made the worst decision of my career. I saved the image to my personal log and routed it through an encrypted channel to one person I knew wouldn't let it die: Corin. By the next morning, the ship was buzzing with tension you could feel in your bones. Corin didn't say a word to me when I passed him, but I could tell he'd seen it. Others had too. The way conversations cut off when I walked by told me enough. In the engine room, I overheard someone say, "If Command's running from it, that means they know exactly what it is." On the bridge, a nav officer muttered to her partner, "It's not a ghost. Ghosts don't change course." Even Raylan looked more tense than usual, though he didn't acknowledge me. We stayed on the move for 12 hours, putting as much distance between ourselves and the zone as possible. But the next shift, an unconfirmed sensor ping came from the aft perimeter. It was faint, but moving at the same trajectory we were. The zone wasn't letting us go. That night, the crew meeting turned into a shouting match. The captain had called us together to clarify misinformation, but it had the opposite effect. "There was no ship," Drevin said firmly. "The anomalies recorded were atmospheric distortions within the zone's gravitational field." "That's garbage," Corin barked. "Distortions don't have human engine signatures." Half the room erupted in agreement, the other half in jeers. Someone shouted about being lied to. Someone else accused the believers of wanting to start a war. The captain threatened disciplinary action, but his voice barely carried over the noise. And in the middle of it all, I realized something chilling. No matter what the truth was, the crew was already breaking apart. When the meeting finally dissolved, Raylan caught me in the corridor. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharp. "You've been talking," he said. "People are asking questions," I replied. "They're asking because you showed them something," he snapped. "Don't bother denying it." I didn't. "You think you've done the right thing?" he asked. "I think covering it up will destroy this crew faster than the truth," I said. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "The truth will destroy more than this crew, Varen. It'll tear open a century-old wound and bleed this galaxy dry. If you care about anything, your ship, your people, you'll let this die." But as he walked away, I knew I couldn't. Because whatever that ship was, it wasn't just haunting the zone. It was following us. And sooner or later, the rest of the galaxy was going to see it too. We didn't get far before it showed up again. 2 days into our evasive course, the Orion's reach was running cold. Heat signatures dampened, lights dimmed, core output throttled to a fraction, like we were a submarine drifting through enemy waters. The official excuse was power efficiency during a long-range patrol, but no one believed that. The air itself felt heavy, the way it does before a storm. I was back in the observation cradle on a skeleton shift when the sensors whispered it to me. A faint ping, barely there but moving fast. It wasn't coming from the zone anymore. It was behind us. I magnified the feed. The image was clearer than before, almost like the ship wanted me to see it this time. The human hull plating caught faint starlight, and I could make out more than just the shape. I saw markings. Burned, scarred, faded, but markings that didn't belong to any known fleet. And then I saw something that sent a spike of cold down my spine. Lights. Not just the static, dull glow I'd seen before, but a ripple, like windows, with movement behind them. Someone was alive on that ship. Before I could process that, a private comm channel opened on its own. I didn't touch anything. The voice that came through wasn't alien. It wasn't synthetic. It was human. "Orion's reach. Hold course." It was deep, calm, and carried the faint rasp of age. I froze, my fingers hovering over the controls. "Identify yourself," I managed. "You've seen us before," the voice said, ignoring my question. "We're here to talk." I patched the feed to the bridge instantly. "Captain, are you hearing this?" The channel hissed for a few seconds before Dreven's voice cut in. "End transmission. That's an order." "Sir, they're human." "That's not a human ship," Dreven snapped. "Shut it down, Varen, now." But before I could obey or disobey, the voice returned. "We don't have much time. They'll try to erase this." And then, silence. The signal cut clean, like it had been sliced by a blade. The sensors showed nothing. The ship was gone again. The bridge summoned me within minutes. Dreven stood in the center like a block of steel, Raylan at his side. They didn't ask me to sit. "Everything you saw and heard in the last hour is classified at the highest level," Dreven said. "You will not repeat it to anyone." "That was a human voice," I said. "That was interference from within the zone," Raylan corrected. "The Forbidden Zone distorts signals, plays tricks with your mind." "I'm not imagining things," I cut in. "That ship's following us. There are people on board." Dreven's eyes hardened. "Crewman Varen, if you continue down this path, you will be relieved of duty and placed under confinement for the remainder of the patrol. Do I make myself clear?" Every instinct in me wanted to tell him where he could shove his orders, but I wasn't ready to lose access to the observation cradle. Not yet. So I nodded. "Clear," I said. I didn't go back to my quarters after that. I went to Corin. He was in the engine bay, sleeves rolled up, sweat beading on his brow. I told him everything. The markings, the windows, the voice. His jaw tightened with each detail. "They're trying to bury it," he muttered. "They've been trying to bury it for 100 years, I said. "But this time it's not staying buried." "You think it's one of the old warships?" "Could be," I said, "or something worse." That got a grim smile from him. "Worse for them, better for us." I didn't ask what he meant by us. I didn't have to. The next night, it contacted me again. This time there was no faint ping or subtle approach. The ship appeared dead ahead, less than 50 clicks out, its massive silhouette blotting out half the stars in the viewport. No cloaking shimmer, no flicker, just raw, undeniable presence. The comm channel opened on its own again. "You didn't listen," the same voice said. "They're still steering you away." "Who are you?" I demanded. "A reminder," the voice said, "of what humans are capable of when they're not leashed." I swallowed hard. "Where did you come from? How are you in the zone?" The man chuckled, low, humorless. "We never left." Something about those words set every hair on my neck standing upright. "Why show yourself now?" I asked. "Because the leash is tightening, and some of you can still break it." The comm cut out again, but this time the ship didn't vanish. It drifted closer, slow and deliberate. That's when the alarms went off. The Orion's Reach was firing maneuvering thrusters hard, veering away from the contact vector. On the bridge, Dreven's voice barked orders over the intercom. "Secure all stations. Prepare for acceleration." "Captain, they're not hostile," I yelled into my mic. "They're forbidden," Dreven snapped back. "And that's enough." The Reach's engines roared, and the stars began to smear. The human ship didn't follow. It just hung there in the black, watching us go. Over the next 48 hours, tension exploded into something sharper. The believers, the ones who wanted to know what that ship was, began organizing themselves quietly. Meal shifts rearranged, duty swaps requested. Corin was at the center of it. No surprise there. The deniers stuck to the captain's side. They weren't all true believers in his orders. Some were just afraid. Afraid of what it would mean if the treaty had been a lie. Afraid of what it would mean if humans had been hiding in the zone for a century. Me? I was caught between wanting to know the truth and knowing that getting it might kill me. On the 5th day, the ship made contact in a way no one could deny. We were running another evasive course when the main screen lit up with a proximity warning. This time the Reach wasn't the one being chased. The human ship was ahead, directly in our path, as if it had been waiting. "Full stop," Drevin ordered. Raylan hesitated. "Sir, if we stop, they'll—" "That's an order." The Reach slowed to a crawl. And then, without a word, the human ship broadcast an open signal across every channel, no encryption. Every crew member heard it in their earset, in their quarters, even over the mess hall speakers. "We are the Resolute. We are human. We have been here since the day they tried to erase us. Your command will tell you we're an echo, a ghost, a threat. But the truth is simpler. We survived." The mess hall erupted in shouts. On the bridge, I saw Drevin's hands clench into fists. "They will turn you away from us," the voice continued. "They will tell you we are dangerous. They're right. We are dangerous. To them. To the leash they've kept on you for a century." The signal ended as abruptly as it began. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then chaos broke loose. Crew channels flooded with questions, demands, accusations. Deniers swore it was a trick. Believers called for parley. Someone suggested opening fire, and that only made things worse. Raylan's voice cracked through the noise. "Lock down all comms. Now!" But it was too late. The Resolute had said enough to split the crew down the middle. That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did most of the others. Corin found me in the maintenance bay. "They're not going to let us near that ship," he said. "No," I agreed. "They'll run until command can make this disappear." "Unless we make contact ourselves," he said. I stared at him. "You're talking about mutiny." "I'm talking about truth," he replied. "That ship's ours, human, and whatever they've been doing out here, we deserve to know. And if it's not what we think, then at least we'll know, and we'll stop letting them decide what's real." I didn't answer right away. Because the thing about mutiny is, once you cross that line, you don't get to come back. But as I thought about the Resolute's words, about the leash, I realized I'd already crossed it the moment I'd sent that first image to Corin. The captain's lockdown came hard and fast. Within hours of the Resolute's broadcast, every comm channel outside the bridge was disabled. Crew logs were wiped from the last 72 hours. Personal terminals required clearance from the XO just to open a maintenance schedule. Even mess hall discussions were monitored for morale compliance, which meant 2 security officers parked themselves at every table, arms folded, eyes sharp. If Drevin's goal was to smother the tension, it backfired. People didn't stop talking. They just started talking where he couldn't hear them. Corin became the quiet center of it all. He didn't make speeches. He didn't rally people with grand promises. He just listened, nodded, and made sure the right people ended up on the same shifts. In the same sectors, where conversations could happen without interference. And I was right there with him. I kept to my observation post as much as possible. It was the one place I still had semi-direct control over sensor feeds. Drevin couldn't cut me out entirely without leaving a gap in our outer perimeter watch. And even in the middle of all this, the captain couldn't risk being blind in space. The Resolute hadn't reappeared since its broadcast, but the zone was never empty. You could feel it sometimes, that quiet, oppressive awareness, like you were being studied from far away. I had no doubt they were still there, watching, waiting, and I was starting to understand what for. 3 days after the broadcast, Raylan pulled me aside in the corridor. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I know what you and Corin are doing," he said. I kept my face blank. "I'm following orders." "You're following him." His voice was low but sharp. He's going to get you killed. Or worse, you'll live long enough to regret it. Regret what? Wanting the truth? You think you're ready for the truth? He stepped closer. I've seen it, Varen. The Resolute isn't some lost colony ship. It's not a relic of the old war. It's a weapon, one that doesn't answer to anyone and won't stop once it's pointed at a target. That's supposed to scare me? It should, Raylan said, and his eyes told me he meant it. But then he ruined it with his next words. If you were smart, you'd let this die. And just like that, he walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. That night, Corrin came to me with a plan. We're not waiting for them to come to us, he said. We're going to them. He laid it out. We'd fake a power fault in one of the secondary comm relays. It would require a 2-man maintenance team to go EVA and repair it. In reality, we'd take a pod out far enough to get clear of the Reach's jamming field and signal the Resolute directly. If they wanted to talk, that would be their chance. 2-man team, I said slowly. You and me? He shook his head. Me and Tarek. You stay inside, you'll cover us from observation and keep the captain's eyes busy. It was smart, and I hated it. If this was the only chance to see the Resolute up close, I wanted to be there. But Corrin wasn't wrong. Someone had to keep the bridge distracted. We set it for the next day's second shift, when Drevin would be buried in status briefings with the senior officers. It went wrong almost immediately. They made it to the pod without incident, launched clean, and were out of the Reach's jamming radius in under 10 minutes. I kept the bridge feed showing a static maintenance loop, hiding their real position. Then, halfway through the planned window, my console lit up. Not with a Resolute transmission, but with an inbound signal from the zone itself. It was encrypted, old human military encryption, the kind nobody used anymore. It wasn't directed at me specifically, but my station was the only one set to monitor unclassified pings, so I caught it. Your captain is not your enemy, but he is not your friend. Choose carefully. The voice wasn't the one from before. This was younger, sharper, and carried an edge that felt like a knife at the throat. Who is this? I demanded. You've been asking the wrong question, the voice replied. It's not who we are, it's what we are. Before I could press further, the signal cut off, just as the Resolute appeared on sensors. It wasn't far from the pod. The bridge went to red alert instantly. Drevin stormed in, barking for course correction and retrieval of the EVA team. Belay that, I said without thinking. Every head turned. Drevin's eyes narrowed. Repeat that, crewman. If you bring them in now, you'll spook the Resolute. Let them make contact. Raylan slammed a hand on the console. They've already made contact. You don't know what... I know they haven't fired on us, I shot back. I know they've had a dozen chances to destroy this ship, and they haven't taken one. If they wanted us dead, we wouldn't be talking right now. It bought maybe 10 seconds of hesitation. Then Drevin ordered full retrieval. On my feed, I watched the Resolute hold position as the pod approached. It didn't move, didn't arm weapons. But it did send another open broadcast, one every single crew member heard, no matter how hard the captain tried to kill it. You've been told the Forbidden Zone is death. That's true, for some. For others, it's the only place to live free. Your leaders will tell you we're dangerous. They're right. But they won't tell you why they fear us. They fear us because we've broken their leash. The crew was silent, but not with fear. This was the kind of silence you could feel boiling under the skin. Ask yourselves this, the voice continued. If you were truly free, why would they need to forbid anything from you? The pod made it back. But Tarek was pale as a corpse when he stepped out, eyes fixed on nothing. Corrin said nothing at all. They went straight to debrief with Drevin. I didn't see Corrin again until later that night, when he came to my quarters. They've seen it, he said. What? The Resolute, inside, up close. It's not like anything we have now. It's human, but it's more. Older in some ways, newer in others. They've been building in the zone all this time, Varen. Not hiding. Preparing. For what? He looked me dead in the eye. For us to take back what we lost. The next day, Drevin called an all-hands. His message was short. The Orion's reach was leaving the zone entirely. Orders from command. No further contact with the Resolute was permitted. Anyone attempting it would be confined until return to dock. Half the crew walked out before he finished speaking. I stayed. Not because I agreed with him, but because I knew walking out then would blow everything too early. The mutiny wasn't coming someday anymore. It was coming now, and the Resolute knew it. Because that night, as I sat alone in the observation cradle, my console lit up again. This time there was no voice, no transmission. Just a set of coordinates, outside the zone, a meeting point. The coordinates from the Resolute burned in my mind for the rest of the night. They weren't deep inside the zone. That alone made my pulse race. They were in open space, far enough from patrol routes that no one would stumble on the meeting by accident. It was an invitation, and maybe a test. I didn't sleep. Instead, I memorized the star map, cross-referenced the coordinates against known nav hazards, and traced 3 separate routes that would get us there without crossing a major traffic lane. By morning, I had the beginnings of a plan. Drevin's orders to keep us on a course away from the zone were clear, but his control wasn't as ironclad as he thought. Too many crew had started doubting him. Too many believed the Resolute's message. When I found Corin in the engine bay, I didn't need to convince him. I just told him the coordinates. "Outside the zone?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "Yes. They want to meet. Then we make it happen." We worked out the rest over 2 whispered conversations between shift changes. The plan wasn't complicated. Complicated plans fail. We'd wait until Drevin took his next off-shift rest cycle. Corin would run a reactor heat redistribution drill, something that required brief deceleration and a temporary change in course vector. While the bridge was focused on keeping the reactor levels stable, we'd make the nav shift. Once the heading was locked, anyone on the bridge who tried to reverse it would be overridden from engineering. It wasn't elegant, but it didn't have to be. When the time came, everything went to hell faster than I expected. Corin kicked off the drill right on schedule, triggering alarms that sent engineering into a frenzy. I was already at my station, watching as the bridge scrambled to compensate. The helm officer called out, "Minor vector adjustment needed to balance core output." Raylan's voice cut in sharp. "Negative. Maintain heading." "Sir, the core's temp differential." "I said maintain heading." That was my cue. I slipped the course change into the nav system under a maintenance override code. The ship's nose swung a few degrees, subtle, but enough to point us toward the Resolute's meeting point. For 30 seconds, no one noticed. Then Rylan did. "Why are we turning?" he barked. "Compensating for reactor load," the helm officer replied automatically. "We're not turning toward the zone," Raylan snapped back. I killed my audio feed before the argument hit full pitch. In engineering, Corin was already locking out the helm controls. That was when Drevin's voice boomed over the ship-wide channel. "All crew, stand by. Helm control has been compromised. Security to engineering and observation immediately." We'd expected him to catch on eventually. We hadn't expected him to skip straight to declaring a security emergency. The first blow of the mutiny wasn't a gunshot or a punch, it was a door lock. Engineering sealed itself from the inside before security could storm it. 3 crew, loyal to Corin, had weapons out. Not military grade, but enough to discourage anyone from trying to rush them. The bridge still had communications, but every helm command they issued got rejected. That was when the shouting started. Crew in the corridors arguing about whether we were hijacking the ship or saving it. Deniers trying to rally support for Dreven's orders, believers urging others to see the meeting through. The Reach had always been tight quarters, but now it felt claustrophobic in a way I'd never experienced before. Raylan himself came down to observation to drag me off the console. "What the hell are you doing, Varen?" he demanded. "Following up on an opportunity your captain's too scared to take," I said without looking at him. "You think the Resolute is your friend?" His voice was low. "Dangerous. They'll chew you up and use you. That's what they do." "And Command doesn't?" I shot back. "At least they're honest about it." I saw the flicker in his expression, frustration, maybe even a little fear. But before he could answer, the console lit up. The Resolute was hailing us. The voice was the same one from the first time. Calm. Controlled. "You're close. Hold course." I didn't mute the channel. I wanted the entire observation deck to hear. "We've got interference," I said, more for Raylan's benefit than theirs. "Interference ends when you're ready to end it," the voice replied. "But you have to choose. No one can do it for you." I glanced at Raylan. "You hear that?" He didn't answer, just keyed his mic. "Bridge, cut that channel now." It cut, but the seed was planted. Hours passed with the ship in a tense stalemate. Engineering controlled the helm. The bridge controlled life support and weapons. Neither side wanted to fire on the other, but neither would back down. Dreven tried to wait us out, but the closer we got to the coordinates, the harder it became to pretend this wasn't happening. Crew who'd been neutral started taking sides, not because they believed in one cause or the other, but because they could see which way the wind was blowing, and the wind was blowing toward the Resolute. When we finally dropped out of warp at the coordinates, the space ahead was empty. For a heartbeat, I thought we'd been played. Then the black rippled, like a curtain being drawn back, and the Resolute emerged. Up close, it was even more massive than I'd imagined. Its hull was scarred from battles no one had recorded, patched with materials I didn't recognize. The markings I'd seen before were clearer now, not a fleet designation, but a name burned into the plating. Resolute. Dreven's voice came over the ship-wide channel, tight and controlled. "All stations, stand by. We will not initiate contact." He didn't need to. The Resolute hailed us first. "Orion's Reach," the voice said, amplified ship-wide. "You've come farther than most, but distance means nothing if you turn back now." Dreven cut in immediately. "This is Captain Dreven of the Orion's Reach. You are operating in violation of—" "We don't answer to your treaties, Captain," the voice interrupted. "We answer to the people who remember what it means to be human." That got a murmur from the crew, even on the observation deck. "You've been told we're dangerous," the voice continued. "We are. Dangerous to those who would keep you leashed. Dangerous to those who decided for you what you could be." Corin patched into the open channel from engineering. "Then show us what we could be." There was a pause, and then the voice replied, "Dock with us. See for yourself." Dreven didn't hesitate. "Negative. We will not approach." But this time, he didn't have control of the helm. The Reach began moving forward, slow and steady. On the bridge, orders were shouted, but the helm ignored them. The engineering lockout was holding. The docking clamps met with a deep metallic thud. For the first time in over a century, a sanctioned Earth vessel was physically connected to the Resolute. The voice came again. Quieter now. "Bring only those who are ready to see. Leave the rest behind. Once you cross our threshold, there is no going back." I didn't need to look at Corin to know we were both going. The docking seals locked with a metallic groan that vibrated through the deck under my boots. The sound was final, in a way I couldn't explain, like a prison door swinging shut. Only we were the ones walking in willingly. The boarding passage extended from the Orion's Reach to the Resolute's airlock. It wasn't the sleek, automated walkway I expected. This one looked almost improvised. Thick, armored plates bolted together, wiring bundles running along the inside like veins. "You ready for this?" Corin asked beside me, his voice low. "No," I said honestly, "but we're doing it anyway." We'd brought 6 in total. Me, Corin, Tarek, 2 engineers loyal to him, and 1 navigation officer who'd switched sides after the first broadcast. Everyone else stayed behind, either by choice or because they were still under Dreven's orders. The airlock hissed, and a wave of warm, oxygen-rich air hit my face. It smelled different from the Reach, not recycled station clean, but alive, like a workshop that had been in constant use. The door opened. The first thing I saw was steel. Not the sterile, polished corridors I was used to, but raw, functional metal, walls scarred with age, flooring reinforced with plating that looked like it had been salvaged from battleships. And then I saw the people. Humans. Every one of them. No alien crew, no hybrid augmentation like some frontier colonies favored. They wore a mix of uniforms and plain clothes, most patched or altered, but all marked with the same small emblem stitched near the collar, a clenched fist over a rising star. An older man stepped forward to greet us. His face was weathered, hair gone to steel gray, but his eyes were sharp. I knew the voice before he spoke. "Welcome aboard the Resolute," he said. "You're the one from the broadcasts," I said. He nodded. "Call me Captain Voss." Corin glanced at me. The name didn't match any pre-treaty registry we'd ever studied. Either it was an alias, or records of him had been erased long before we were born. Voss didn't waste time. He led us through the main corridor, and I realized the Resolute was bigger than the Reach. Older, yes, but built for endurance, not speed. The walls were lined with display panels showing maps, tactical overlays, and something else, not star charts. "Those are neural suppression grids," Corin muttered under his breath, reading the alien-like schematics. Voss heard him. "Not alien," he corrected. "Human. Developed by your command 100 years ago. Installed in every sanctioned ship, every settlement. Keeps people compliant." I frowned. "You're telling me our ships are mind control devices?" "Not control," he said, "dampening. Your emotions, your instincts, the parts of you that make rebellion natural, are being chemically and neurologically suppressed every moment you're under their systems. You think you're calm and disciplined. You're actually sedated." I felt something cold settle in my gut. He took us to a chamber near the Resolute's core. The doors opened to reveal a massive machine, a tangle of conduits and reactor-like structures humming with energy. "This is why they fear us," Voss said. "We tore out every suppression system when we came into the zone. Out here there's no leash. We feel everything, and we remember everything." "You've been here the whole time," I said. "Watching us." "Waiting," he corrected. "You can't start a revolution when the revolutionaries are drugged from birth." Corin stepped forward. "And you can undo it?" "We can," Voss said. "But once it's undone, there's no going back. You'll feel things you've never felt. Anger, hunger for more, grief sharper than you can imagine. Freedom's not comfortable. It's fire." We moved deeper into the ship. Every corridor hummed with activity. People repairing gear, training in zero-G combat rigs, studying maps of systems I'd never heard of. It was like walking through the bones of a war machine that had never stopped fighting. In one hangar, I saw ships docked that weren't in any official registry. Sleek interceptors, heavily armed gunboats, even what looked like an atmospheric drop carrier. "You've been building a fleet," I said quietly. "A fleet," Voss said. "And an army. We're not here to survive forever in the zone. We're here to go back." That word, back, hit me harder than I expected. Back to Earth. Back to the colonies. Back to the people who didn't even know they were being kept in a cage. We ended the tour in a briefing room. The walls were covered in old banners, some from pre-treaty human fleets, others with that clenched fist and star emblem. A large holo table flickered to life, showing the Orion's reach as a pulsing dot near the edge of the zone. Voss leaned on the table. Here's what happens next. Your captain is going to try to cut this connection and run. You can let him board, or you can help us disable the suppression grid on your ship. Once that's done, your crew will feel the leash come off. Some will join us, some will fight us, but all of them will know. And if we refuse? I asked. Voss didn't smile. Then we let you go. You can return to your leash, pretend you never saw us, but you'll carry the weight of knowing you walked away. Corin didn't hesitate. We do it. The others nodded one by one, all except Tarek. He sat back, arms crossed, jaw tight. I've served 10 years on sanctioned ships, he said. If what you're saying is true, they've had that control on me the entire time. And you want me to just trust you to rip it out? No, Voss said. I want you to see what happens when it's gone. Then you can decide. He turned to me. You're the one they'll follow, Varen. You've got the observation post. You can feed us the access codes we need to patch into your grid. It wasn't lost on me that he'd been watching long enough to know exactly where I worked and what my influence was. We were given an hour to talk it over. I spent most of it staring out one of the Resolute's forward viewports, watching the Reach hanging there in the void. It looked small from here. Smaller than I'd ever realized. Corin came up beside me. You know we're not going back the same either way. Yeah, I said. That's the problem. Problem? I turned to face him. If we do this, Drevin will never let us back aboard alive. And if we don't, the Resolute is going to vanish into the zone again, and we'll never see them twice. Corin's eyes were steady. Then we make our choice, and live with it. When we returned to the briefing room, Voss was waiting with a small, palm-sized device. This will give you a 90-second override window in your suppression grid, he said. Enough time for our signal to punch through and burn it out. After that, the crew will feel different. What happens after 90 seconds? I asked. You'll find out, Voss said. But I'll warn you, not everyone survives the burn. Some minds snap under the rush. Most don't want to go back, though. He placed the device in my hand. It was lighter than I expected. We left the Resolute without ceremony, walking back through that armored boarding tube into the Reach's airlock. Drevin was there waiting, flanked by armed security. You've had your tour, he said coldly. Now get back to your stations, and if I hear one whisper about that ship, you'll spend the rest of this patrol in the brig. His eyes flicked to my hands. I'd hidden the device in my sleeve, but I could tell he suspected something. I didn't give him the satisfaction of reacting. Understood, sir? That night, alone in the observation cradle, I turned the device over in my palm. 90 seconds. That's all it would take to tear the leash off every mind on this ship. And I couldn't decide if that was salvation, or the first step into chaos we couldn't control. I didn't touch the device for 2 days. It stayed tucked in the inner pocket of my uniform, close enough that I could feel its weight whenever I moved, but far enough out of sight that Drevin's watchful eyes couldn't land on it. The more I thought about Voss's warning, the more it gnawed at me. Not everyone survives the burn. That wasn't a throwaway line. I'd seen the way he looked at Tarek when he said it, like he knew the man wouldn't make it. But I also knew Corin was right. There was no going back to pretending. I'd seen the leash. I'd heard what we were under. I'd seen the people on the Resolute moving, working, talking with an edge of intensity no sanctioned crew ever had. They felt alive in a way we didn't. The longer I waited, the more the Reach felt like a coffin. The opportunity came during a routine systems diagnostic. My shift in the observation cradle gave me access to the outer comms panel, one of the grid's main connection points. I didn't tell Corin. If I failed, I didn't want him implicated. If I succeeded, he'd know soon enough. I closed the hatch to the cradle, dimmed the console lights, and slid the device from my pocket. It was smaller than I remembered, warm from the heat of my body. The metal was smooth except for one recessed switch under my thumb. When I pressed it, nothing happened at first. Then a faint vibration ran through the console. A red indicator blinked twice on the device. 90 seconds. The first thing I felt was wrong. My head buzzed like I'd stood up too fast after hours lying down. My heart kicked into a rhythm that felt like it was trying to break my ribs. Then the heat came. Not physical heat, but a surge in my chest that spread outward like someone had set fire to my blood. My thoughts started moving faster, sharper. The constant low haze I'd never noticed before, like a weight over my mind, just evaporated. I remembered things I didn't know I'd forgotten. Moments of anger I'd swallowed without thinking. Questions I'd never asked because they didn't matter. The years I'd served without ever once feeling like I owned my choices. It was intoxicating and terrifying. And then the rest of the ship began to change. Voices erupted over comms, crew members shouting, swearing, laughing with a manic edge. I heard someone in engineering yell, "It's gone! It's gone! I can think again!" Security channels lit up with chaos reports. People were abandoning posts, others were locking themselves in quarters. 2 officers on the bridge started arguing so loudly their mics picked it up shipwide. Some didn't handle it well. One voice over medbay comms was screaming, not words, just raw sound, until someone cut the channel. Another reported a crewman had collapsed, convulsing. Voss hadn't been exaggerating. The burn was breaking some of us. I rode it out in the cradle, gripping the console to keep myself steady. The burn was still roaring through me when the device's vibration stopped. The 90 seconds over. But the haze didn't come back. It was gone. For good. That's when Drevin made his move. "This is the captain," his voice thundered over shipwide. "We are under attack. All crew will return to assigned stations immediately. Anyone refusing to comply will be treated as hostile." It was a lie. We weren't under attack, not yet. But it was the kind of lie that worked when the leash was still in place. Now it only made people angrier. The bridge tried to reassert helm control. Engineering refused. Navigation stopped responding entirely. Security teams loyal to Drevin clashed with crew who'd felt the burn and weren't about to hand their minds back. The Reach was eating itself alive. Corin broke into my channel. "Varen, was that you?" "Yes." "Then listen to me. The Resolute's moving in. You need to get to engineering. We're going to cut Drevin out completely." On my way down, I passed scenes I'll never forget. A medic holding a crewman who was shaking so hard he couldn't breathe. 2 officers smashing a weapons locker open while arguing over who should lead. A group in the mess hall tearing the captain's orders sheet off the wall and burning it over a food heater. Everywhere I looked, the haze was gone from their eyes, and for the first time, I realized what Voss had meant. Freedom was fire. It was burning through the ship right now, and no one could put it back in the bottle. Engineering was locked down tight when I arrived. Corin let me in through a side hatch, grinning like a man who'd just set a match to something priceless. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before Drevin sends his loyalists down here in force," he said. "That's all the time we need." He showed me the console. Helm, weapons, comms, all rerouted here. The bridge still thought they had them, but every command they sent vanished into nothing. "Once we've got full control," Corin said, "we send a signal to the Resolute. They'll dock and pull the ones who want to go." "And the rest?" I asked. His grin faded. They'll have to make their choice. The firefight started before we finished the lockout. Security hit the main hatch with breaching charges. The blast shook the deck, and 3 of Corrin's people took up firing positions behind the console banks. The shooting was short and ugly. Most of Dreven's men weren't aiming to kill. They still thought they could restore order. But in the burn's wake, no one was backing down. When it was over, 2 of ours were wounded, 1 dead. Security fell back, but they'd be back in greater numbers. Corrin slammed the last override into place. The Reach was ours. I opened a channel to the Resolute. "This is Varen. Grid is down, ship is free." Voss's voice came through instantly. "Hold position, we're coming aboard." The sight of the Resolute closing in through the main viewport was surreal. This massive, battle-scarred beast gliding toward us like it had been waiting its whole life for this moment. But not everyone saw it as salvation. Raylan's voice cut in over shipwide. "To any crew still loyal to the fleet, arm yourselves. The Resolute is hostile and will board by force. Defend your ship." It didn't matter. The burn had already tipped the balance. Half the crew wanted them to come. When the Resolute docked, the boarding was fast. Not a siege, not an invasion, just coordinated armed teams moving with precision. They didn't shoot unless shot at. And they offered every crew member a choice: stay on the Reach and live under Dreven, or come with them and live free. I don't know how many went either way. I just know I was among the first to cross. The moment my boots hit the Resolute's deck again, I felt like I'd stepped into a different kind of gravity. Not heavier, just more real. Voss was there, watching as the Reach shrank in the viewport. "Once you burn the leash," he said, "you can never wear it again." I knew he was right. From the Resolute's aft viewport, the Orion's Reach hung in space like a wounded animal. Her running lights flickered, one engine outputting at half power, the other cold. Even from here, I could see the scars, damage from the boarding that Dreven would never log in any official record. "She won't chase us," Voss said beside me, his voice calm. "Not for a while. The leash is gone, and Dreven's crew is too fractured to move as one." I didn't ask how he knew. He'd been studying us for years. One look at the Reach now was enough for him to know she was no longer a threat. "How many stayed behind?" I asked. Voss's eyes didn't leave the viewport. "Enough to keep the ship running, not enough to stop what's coming." The what's coming was what I needed to understand. We left the viewing deck and made our way through the Resolute's broad central corridor, its metal deck plates ringing under our boots. We passed crews already moving with purpose, running diagnostics, loading supply crates, checking weapons I didn't recognize. The air felt charged, like the whole ship was coiled for a single decisive strike. "What exactly are you planning?" I asked as we walked. Voss didn't slow. "You've seen the leash. You've felt the burn. Now imagine that same burn igniting across every sanctioned human vessel in the galaxy. Every colony. Every outpost." "You're talking about war," I said. "I'm talking about truth," he countered. "War will follow. That's inevitable." "But it's not the point. The point is to end the age of sedation, to wake our people before they've forgotten they were ever awake." We stopped in a chamber I hadn't seen before. It was smaller than the main hangars, but filled with a hum that made the air feel alive. At its center stood a massive cylindrical device, bristling with antennae and dish arrays. "This," Voss said, resting a hand on the cold metal, "is the beacon." It was ugly, built from mismatched parts, some clearly scavenged from alien tech. But there was a presence to it, something that felt less like a machine and more like a declaration. "It's not a weapon," Voss said. "It's a signal. A burn trigger strong enough to disable suppression grids across half the galaxy. One pulse, and millions wake up." I took a step closer. And then what? He gave a thin smile. Then we see who we really are without the leash. Corin was already in the chamber, overseeing final calibrations. His grin was the same one he'd worn in engineering during the mutiny, the look of a man who'd bet everything and knew he was holding a winning hand. "You're just in time," he said. "We're aligning the beacon now." I watched the Resolute's crew work, efficient, unhurried, confident. These weren't zealots. They were people who'd already gone through the burn and come out the other side with purpose. It was impossible not to think of the Reach's crew in comparison. Even free of the leash, they'd still been stumbling, arguing, fighting each other. This ship had direction. Voss didn't sugarcoat the risks. "Once we fire the beacon, we'll have the full attention of every government, alien and human alike. The treaty's guardians will call us a terrorist faction. The alien powers will see us as destabilizing the balance they've spent a century building. Some humans will join us. Others will try to put the leash back on." "And Drevin?" I asked. "He'll run back to command with a report that makes him look like the hero, which is fine. Heroes make good rallying points, for both sides." The idea that Drevin might survive and become a face for the other side didn't sit well. But war wasn't clean, and neither was truth. We launched within the hour. The Resolute pulled away from the Reach with slow, deliberate thrusts before spinning up its drives for a long burn toward deep, unpatrolled space. The beacon chamber became the heart of the ship. Crews rotated in shifts, maintaining power flow and recalibrating arrays. Corin and I took turns monitoring the targeting system, a long-range net of coordinates that would ensure the signal reached every grid node in its path. It was in those hours, staring at the projection, that I realized just how big this was. The Resolute wasn't aiming at one sector. It was aiming at the heart of the galaxy's controlled space. One pulse, and half the civilized worlds would wake up overnight. The night before the launch, I couldn't sleep. The burn was still in me, sharper now that I understood what we were about to do. I found Voss in the observation lounge, staring out at the dark. For a long time, we didn't speak. Finally, I asked, "Why me?" "You were the one who didn't look away," he said simply. "Most people, they see something forbidden. They bury it to protect themselves. You saw the Resolute and you couldn't let it go. That's all it takes to start." He didn't need to tell me the rest. I knew my life on the Reach was over the moment I'd made that first report to Rylan. This path had been set from the beginning. When the beacon fired, there was no grand explosion, no blinding light. Just a deep, thrumming vibration through the Resolute's hull and a ripple in the sensors as the pulse went out. The readouts showed it spreading, a sphere of influence growing by the second, crossing worlds and fleets like a shadow passing over the sun. Within minutes, we began receiving intercepted transmissions, panicked fleet reports, colony governors shouting for answers, civilian comms full of people describing the burn. Some were terrified, some were furious, some laughed like they'd been holding it in for years. Voss watched it all without expression. That's the sound of the leash snapping. We didn't stick around to watch the reaction. The Resolute jumped 3 systems away, then cut drives and drifted in silent running. The galaxy was awake now. The hard part would be surviving what came next. Corin found me later, leaning on a railing in one of the upper maintenance bays. "You realize we've just painted a target the size of a planet on our backs?" "Yeah," I said. "And you're fine with that?" I thought about the Reach, about the crew torn in half, about Drevin holding on to control not because he believed in it, but because it was all he knew. Then I thought about the people on the Resolute moving with that raw, unfiltered fire in their eyes. "I'd rather be hunted and awake than safe and asleep," I said. Corin grinned. "Then welcome to the fight." 2 days later, the first message came through. Not from Dreven, not from command, from another human ship. The voice was clipped, cautious but unmistakably free. This is the Bastion. We received your pulse. We're ready to talk. Voss looked at me when he heard it. And so it begins. We weren't the only ones anymore. The Resolute was no longer just a ghost ship haunting the zone. It was a signal fire. And as more voices joined the network, it was clear the leash hadn't just been broken. It was never going back on. That was the first night I slept since seeing the Resolute. And in my dreams, there was no haze, only the stars.